Welcome to the Real Python Podcast. This is episode 246. Do you want to learn deeper concepts in Python? Would the accountability of scheduled group classes help you get past the basics? This week, 5 Real Python Intermediate Deep Dive Workshop members discuss their experiences. We discuss the struggles of learning Python independently and the barriers to moving beyond the basics. We also explore the advantages of having a curated collection of both written tutorials and video courses. The cohort members also talk about filling in the gaps in their knowledge, using their new skills at work, and building confidence in their Python journey. Real Python is launching another intermediate deep dive, cohort-based course, combining our high-quality learning materials with live instructor-led sessions. This new course format is designed to help you dive deeper into Python's core principles with guidance and accountability. Check out realpython.com/workshops to learn more about the upcoming Intermediate Python Deep Dive course. All right, let's get started. The Real Python Podcast is a weekly conversation about using Python in the real world. My name is Christopher Bailey, your host. Each week, we feature interviews with experts in the community and discussions about the topics, articles, and courses found at realpython.com. After the podcast, join us and learn real-world Python skills with a community of experts at realpython.com. Well, I want to say welcome to this, probably the biggest group I've ever had on the Real Python Podcast. Welcome to the show. I'll just go around a little bit. Let me start because you joined first here. I got Matt. Matt, tell me a little bit about, tell me where you're from. And then also, what were you doing to learn Python before you joined the course?
So I'm from Lexington, Kentucky. I've been learning Python or working with Python for probably 4 or 5 years now.
Okay.
Started out my professional career as an accountant. So I was a late transition, never formally educated in programming. So it's really just been trying to learn automation. That's where I really got into Python, was trying to automate tasks as a accounting person.
Yeah.
And just, I spent a lot of time just needling around different books, Udemy courses, things. And then I stumbled upon Real Python about a year ago, really liked their material. So that's hopped on the chance to get the first cohort.
Are you using Excel and doing formulas and things like that? That was a lot of the work?
Yeah, I was a very heavy Excel user. And then since once I discovered pandas, never went back to Excel.
Yeah. That's quite the transition. So cool. Awesome. Chris, tell me about where you're from and how did you start learning Python before the course?
Hi there. Born in California, lived here till I was 10, to Oklahoma, finished up in school out there, came back to California and got a job at Jeopardy, the TV show.
Oh, wow. Cool.
Got the job at Jeopardy for doing illustrations and Photoshop work, retouching of images. So anything you saw that came on the screen that was an image or a diagram, I would get ready. And then I was there for years, and we'd always have to put all the picture files into a folder, and then we'd also have to duplicate them to make them certain PMBs.
Okay.
And those go over to the stage and get loaded into the board. So the first thing I ever did was automate a process of, when files go into this folder, make them also a BMP file.
Okay.
And very simple, but I was, starting out just trying to learn automation. That was the biggest thing that I wanted to learn it for.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And then the next one was, when we would load those images into the board, it would take about an hour. Because it'd be 5 shows, because it's 5 shows a day.
Wow.
And then you'd have to go through each of those squares and does this need an image? No. Does this need an image? Yes. Then they load it in Chiron. And with the help of online community and, books, I was able to get a process that took an hour down to about 10 seconds by
Wow. Yeah. Cool.
loading in the thumb drive into the computer and having it run a script that would just populate everywhere.
Nice. Yeah. So we're using like the pill library and stuff like that. Pillow.
It's been 10 plus years ago. I don't think it was a very simple one for changing the file types. I believe the one for the board, it was utilizing some XML files. And let's see, the next question was...
Yeah, just like how you were starting to learn Python. That was the primary thing there.
Same thing, Udemy. And it's just trying to self-learn is super hard.
Yeah.
So I came from like, graphics kind of background, and transitioning over here to programming it's a lot to learn. So Real Python has been awesome with helping.
Awesome. So Jerry, where are you from and how did you start learning Python before you took the course?
Well, I'm in Beaumont, Texas. That's Southeast Texas near Houston.
Okay.
And I have a background in IT, working for MSPs, working as a network administrator for small organizations, and mostly educational. And I work for an educational organization right now that helps support schools and support them with solutions, and also kind of do some MSP, ISP work for them. And because of that, shell scripting, just all kinds of tools came into play. I've kind of browsed and dabbled in, things from Perl, some JavaScript, and of course Python over the years. About a few years ago, I'm getting closer to where I can kind of take early retirement. So I'm an old student, I guess.
Sure.
And I started thinking, well, what do I could take early retirement. I could do something else. And the more I mess with programming, the more I mess with Python too, the more I like it. And I think, well, this would be a really fun way to do things. And I've been trying to, like Chris was saying, on your own, it's hard.
Yeah.
I've done books, I've done things like Udemy or Pluralsight or something like that. And it's always like, well, that's great. I've got some questions. And, it's not really a community or a place where you can kind of put those. So
right.
That's kind of where I've come into this. I'm kind of, at the precipice of, can I make this transition from, network admin who has used these tools a little bit to, I'm going to write some stuff that other people are going to use, and it's not going to be, I'm going to be happy with it.
Yeah. That's a big next step. Cool.
Yep.
All right. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing the name right. Is Akhil? Is that right?
Yes, correct. Yeah.
Okay. I guess the same question. Where are you from and how did you start learning Python before you took the course?
Okay. I'm actually based out of Stuttgart. I also have a background in IT, but actually I started as a software test engineer.
Okay.
So yeah, initially when I started my career, I was mostly working on Java. Then I was using Java for like a very long time, but still there are problems with Java, right? It's like a very heavy kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also, these days Java is not like a a very trending technology out there. So I was interested in picking up Python, and when I started with Python, it was like it was a bit difficult because I was always referencing back to Java.
Yeah.
So it wasn't that great. And also, meanwhile, I found out about Real Python. I started reading, different articles, and I really liked the content. My two channels were like, one was YouTube, different channels following different people.
Yeah.
And the other one was like, looking at the Real Python content. And Real Python content were like, to be honest, they were really great. So when I got this email, right, I really wanted to, jump in and get registered.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but actually time wise, the timeline wasn't like that great. So I took some time to register, but now I find it like, it was a good decision.
Yeah. Cool. Awesome.
So, yeah.
So Rich, where are you from and how did you start learning Python before the course?
Yes, I'm from Laurel, Maryland. So I've started doing Python about 5 years ago, and I'm mostly self-taught, actually.
Okay.
I did a lot of LinkedIn learning to get started. I had a couple of people at work that could help me get started with some of the basics, but not really, any kind of formal instruction. And then I actually took one other class a couple of years ago that was kind of online class, but not with an instructor. Was with everything was pre-recorded kind of situation.
Yeah. I guess some of the questions we kind of answered a little bit of them with that first one. It sounds like a lot of you have used different skills that are either, like in Akhil's case, you have actually done some Java programming. And so like there was this transition, right, of learning how Python behaves comparatively to creating stuff in Java. I always love that first example that a lot of people go of like, how do you create a hello world in Java? And it's pretty complex in the sense that you have to do lots of sort of declarative stuff before you could even really get there. And what I was wondering about with that, maybe I can start with you, Akhil, is like, what were things from that language that maybe really didn't translate at all to Python that you found difficult?
Actually, I mean, one bigger problem was when I was working on Java, right?
Yeah.
So it is strictly object-oriented programming language out there. So when I moved to Python, my problem was drawing the line between when should I rely upon classes, objects,
Yeah,
and when should I, directly make use of just create some modules and have it in a file and use it. This was a biggest problem for me because I mean I was like so much of how should I say it? I was like institutionalized at the Java programming language
sure.
and looking at everything like an object. It wasn't fitting really well with Python.
Yeah.
So I was struggling a bit here and there, and my designs weren't great. So that was one of the biggest challenge. Yeah. Now I'm actually getting over that. Yeah.
Good. That's one of the things I wondered about. Like the feedback I kind of got from Steven, who I kind of wanted to have on the call, but he decided he was like, no, you go do it. Is that object-oriented stuff was like a big thing that kind of came across. I mean, not only was that a big sort of selling point, and we joke about it on the podcast with me and Mr. Trudeau, he literally has a sound effect when we say everything in Python is an object. And it's really interesting to see that. Was that something that was new for you? Like Matt, like when you were getting into this, like had you learned those kinds of concepts in Python before that?
Yeah, so obviously I heard the phrase everything in Python as an object. And I'd done some OOP,
Okay.
not really, but never really understanding it. And then the first probably 2 weeks of this course, the way Stephen explained it and the resources that he provided, like it all clicked and what it actually meant that everything in Python is an object and how you're working with base classes in pretty much every instance. So, I mean, honestly, just the first 2 weeks of this course was worth it for me.
Yeah.
I can kind of weigh in. I actually took a class that was kind of like, at your own, well, it wasn't really at your own pace, but it was all pre-recorded, so it wasn't really interactive.
Yeah.
They were basically teaching software development. And I thought, well, I need to kind of understand how this stuff really works. It's not just, one person writing a program in a corner somewhere.
Right.
And in that class, they used Java for a lot of it. And so I had to like kind of get up to speed on that a lot. And I like the way Akhil puts institutionalized, because you really do have to, to adhere to what Java wants you to do very much. And because of that trauma, I guess, I really like Python's approach to it. It still follows. It really works out really well, but it was really refreshing to kind of like approach object-oriented programming again without, having to, like you were saying, just to do hello world, you have to do all this, I won't say nonsense, but extra work.
Yeah, structural stuff.
Yeah. And once you have the understanding, especially looking at like the contents of objects in Python and how everything kind of interacts, it really kind of glues it all together. It really makes it nice.
Yeah. For those of you who had come to the program and maybe not played around with object-oriented design, does that fit anybody else here? Like the idea behind the course is that it's an intermediate course so that you would have some of the basics. And I feel like I'm one of those people that I definitely learned Python much more from a scripting side of things. And I was coming from, doing HTML and a bit of JavaScript and other things. But so classes and definitely the whole idea of like Dunder methods and all these kinds of other concepts were rather new to me. Does anybody else sort of fit in that mold? Go ahead, Rich.
Yeah, I think so. That was New for me as well. Yeah, I had done it's a lot of the scripting I'd done just really was not in that object oriented kind of theme. Very much like Matt's experience.
How do you see yourself using it now?
I think it's just another going to fit in as another tool in the toolbox of all the scripting tools.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I really liked seeing the Dunder call and how that's used in your own classes. And it just kind of clicked for me with that.
Yeah.
It's really nice. Just all those, the iter tools and, how sequences are made with all the Dunder methods. I normally would just be doing functions, right? Just simple functions running the script. But yeah, the class stuff is pretty great.
Do you feel like that's kind of that next level for somebody who's getting into this sort of stuff where you have been creating scripts, you have been creating, literally like a script, going step by step, function after function, walking through things, that you're kind of moving toward more of like a true application? Do you feel more comfortable with how you might approach something like that now?
Yeah, absolutely. And even, reading code now, like
Okay.
my coworkers, going through and looking at some of their code, I now can understand it a little bit better on what they're doing and what the function or class is actually performing.
One of the things I did very early on in the show is I talked about how could you continue to learn on your own? Just, you guys have all been through that. And the advice was, go look at other people's code. So that's interesting, right, Chris? That the idea that you're like, well, I'm not sure if I understand it. And you can kind of do that immersive thing where you're like, just like, okay, it's like a foreign language and I'm just going to pound my head against it. So you feel like that's broken up some of that for you now?
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Just has been very helpful for that.
Yeah, cool. Anybody else want to speak on the idea of the ability to read code easier?
I can say for sure. I've looked at like different, I guess, Python world kind of things, like working with Django or working with Flask and stuff like that. And you approach that, and I'm trying to like learn how do I use this to really, make a web application, things like that. And it's difficult, but it's easier now. It was difficult in the past because I didn't quite understand, well, why is Flask like this? Why do they, but now I've got so many answers to fill in the blanks, why does this do this? Why does this do that? And I can understand, how they put that together, and it just, instead of just kind of finding my way, maybe doing it right, maybe not doing it right, I kind of really have a better understanding, and, I'm not just hoping to get it right.
Yeah, I can understand that. The idea that you can see how things are structured, like why did they divide this code up into separate components and different modules and things like that? Because the documentation isn't always there. You wish that it was highly commented, but I know that that's one of these things that's hard for a lot of programmers to do.
Well, and they may do something where they think, oh, you're going to get this because you're a programmer. And it's like, well, maybe not. In this case, if I haven't seen this before, it's like, why am I doing this in this way? I don't really know. But knowing, how they're leveraging what Python can do, it really makes a difference to look at frameworks and things like that.
One of the things I wanted to touch on is, before you took the course, what were things that you felt were challenging you? Matt, do you want to speak on that?
Yeah. So I think one of the biggest problems that I had with just self-learning, kind of like we just talked about, it was very much patchwork of just kind of creating scripts like one by one, just running a process step by step. And I think a lot of the Udemy courses, things you see online, like they give you building blocks, but that's all it is. It's like bricks to build a house. And the course is more of a, hey, here's the mortar for the bricks, and this is how it all ties together, and this is why things work. So, yeah, going back to your previous question, that's what this course really did. So, reading other people's code, it makes sense. Traceback errors make a lot more sense, and knowing how those work, how just the classes really work was just eye-opening. So, yeah.
I would also wanted to throw out there like accountability. Like,
okay, yeah,
I needed something. Like I struggled with that for until this I saw the opportunity for this kind of like a structured class and by somebody, in the community that you trust. And it's like, yes, I just need the accountability. I need to have times to be able to present or show or meet.
Sure.
That was really hard for me before. So I usually just scruff it off. Just like, I'll do it tomorrow.
I definitely have that personality too. Yeah, it's easy. It's like having I don't know, they called it an accountability buddy or whatever for like exercising or doing other kinds of things. And in a case of signing up for a course like this, like it's set,
Yeah.
And I need to turn stuff in.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else want to speak to that? Like what was challenging for you with Python? Jerry, do you have anything to say there?
Yeah, I mean, that's. I'm glad that Chris mentioned the accountability because I felt the same way too. It's like, okay, well, I've got to set some time aside for this because I've got my job is kind of it's a full time. Everybody's jobs are full time jobs. It takes up time, but you have to like kind of set some time aside to achieve what you want to do, and it kind of forced me into doing that.
Yeah, cool.
Otherwise struggles that I had is I had a book I bought, went through their online courses, things like that, and I think Matt mentioned building blocks, and that's great. I know how to do this, but I'm kind of learning how to do this by rote. I don't really have that understanding, and so I could never kind of get past. I felt like I was a really well studied Python beginner. Like I had gone through the beginner process like 10 times already now, and I'm really good at it.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah,
but I can't quite get out of there to the next level.
Yeah.
And this is helping because it's that deeper understanding. Somebody mentioned the Dunder methods. I've seen that. I was like, this must have something to do with this, and book I've got nothing. Covering that. It's not the goal of the book, I guess, and I just didn't really have a resource for that. And without just randomly bugging people on the internet, I suppose. But this really kind of helped put all that kind of stuff together and kind of, show behind the scenes what's going on and help me break out of that still just a beginner phase.
Yeah, that was one of the fun things about, and I've said it on the show a lot, that when the email was sent to me to like do video courses, I had a background of teaching and I had a background of learning Python, but I was like, this is like the perfect opportunity to like have to translate, and teaching something to somebody else, of like having to explain it to somebody else really, really cemented it. And so for me, one of the biggest ones when I would look at the other code was decorators. And I was like, what is this symbol? And what is it doing? And, it's like all over, like especially like Flask or something like that, which was a pretty common thing because I was doing some automation coding and I was, copying and pasting code and doing what a lot of people do. Yeah.
You don't know how many times I've seen that. And like, I want to learn how to do this. I'll give myself a project. I'll make something in Flask. And it's like, well, I guess I'll just take that for granted and go on. And that's what I was doing,
Yeah.
And it's like, I really don't want to do that, but I don't have a choice because I really don't have a way to figure this out. And, once again, you don't want to spend 2 hours just trying to figure out what these 2 lines of code do. You want to kind of, I don't know, get something done,
That's cool. So you feel like you were able to get to the crux of the question that you had, like you got to kind of play with it.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
You don't hit roadblocks and just stay there at them,
Yeah, definitely. What were some challenges that you had, Akhil?
Yeah, so just to add on to what others said, right? So one thing is, I'm constantly facing these kind of issues where when you say self-paced, right?
Yeah.
You will always start from the beginning, and once you reach some certain stage, right, you will be bored. And then,
sure.
Yeah, then you'll stop doing it, and then you forget about it.
Yeah.
And then you will not even be interested to continue further. But here it was a different thing. We had this accountability, and also the forums were like very engaging. And every morning when you look at the forum, right, there will be some new topics, and these are not the beginner topics. So because we are in this intermediate, and
yeah, you're skipping all that stuff. That's great.
Yeah. Yeah. So for me, it was like curious to learn about new topics, and also I was constantly looking at the topics and having to cover this, because we also had like this 3 days of Q&A sessions. video sessions.
Yeah.
So there was somebody who was always like behind us to make sure that things are running properly. The way it was designed was it was good. I liked it.
So if you're comfortable with it, can you think of a particular like topic that popped up in the forums there that you were like, oh, this is really interesting?
Actually, Ito tools. I wasn't aware of Ito tools, and once I know about it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, I realized that I was a stupid Python programmer.
No, it's just you just weren't informed about it yet. It's hiding there in the library. Yeah, there's so many built-in things that are a little hard to uncover, and it's so funny that the basics very often don't get into those. Yeah, it's like I feel like often, like if you went to like a shop class, they would like cordon you off like you're a child and never let you play with the power tools. And it's like, well, no, like I'm super interested in that tool over there. And if that's going to make my life easier and speed everything up and like, let's get to that stuff. But having to like always start with just like the hammer and the nail and the handsaw, it's like, so that's cool. I like to hear that. So what were challenges for you, Rich?
So before, I was starting to move into lots of new things that I had never done before, and mostly getting them done, but or figuring them out. But it was slow and painful process, and sometimes. So it was good to good to see some of the things that can add in there. I have a lot of people around at work, but there's nobody really that It's like sometimes you ask, "Hey, has anybody done this before?" And of course, you get crickets, right? You don't really get an answer back. And or if you have a really specific question, then you might get an answer, but no, it was good to start the things like you mentioned, the decorators, for example. I had never used those before and really had no concept. So
Yeah. Anybody have other examples of finding stuff out in the forums or using that tool?
Oh, the decorators were really cool, like Decorator Factory.
Yeah,
that was a great topic, and I liked learning all about that too.
That was definitely the first course that I decided I was going to do. I was like, okay, I want to learn what this is. And Garana's like article is really great. And then he just kept going, which is fun. Sometimes there's a few of our tutorials that just are like, okay, like you may not want to eat all of this in one go. Which I think is kind of nice in some ways. And so one of the things we're trying to do with the video courses often is to like distill at least the first like half of this stuff. And then you could maybe continue on in writing form. I kind of wonder about that a little bit too. This is definitely a mixed media course. You do a lot of reading on your own or watching a video courses. How did you find that? Like, what was good or bad, or were there things that you enjoyed about it? We've already talked about some of the additional things of like the forums and the Q&A sessions, but how were the materials for you? Going with you, Matt.
So I really liked it, especially the sections where there's a written section and it also has an accompanying video course.
Okay.
I found that I learned some things well in written format and other things well in a video format. So it really helped to have both of those mediums to go through and then just to be able to pitch questions to the group.
Yeah. Can you think of, like, for me, looking at code in a written format definitely works the best, but having someone sort of talk through or explain the concepts, that's where the sort of video excels. Is that kind of what was happening with you?
Yeah, because I'd typically I'd have the video session up on one side of my screen and then the written content on the other side. And then I'd go through, and any question I had about the code, the good thing is that they use pretty much the same material in both sides. So you can kind of look at that chunk of code and listen to the explanation and walk yourself through. So I thought that was really helpful.
Cool.
I agree with Matt. It was good to read some of the things and really focus on it. And then it's also like having the video as just like almost a backup sometimes.
Okay.
Very helpful.
Yeah. Because it sounded like a handful of you have played with like Udemy courses. I'm definitely one of those people too. I have an unwatched log of a variety of courses that I never got through.
Mm-hmm.
Part of it was some of the disconnect. Part of it is the age sometimes of things. I like that Stephen went through and kind of curated this stuff and made sure that, I don't know if you got to a point where you're like, okay, I'm going to highlight this part of the text, and this is the thing I'm going to save this for either the forum or for like a question and answer thing. Was that an experience that you had?
I did, yeah. There's like a bookmark section on there, so there's multiple ones that I bookmarked that I want to go back to later, and also keep learning.
Yeah, and I was going to say I had the experience like you mentioned that Stephen kind of curated it. I really appreciated that because I've been on RealPython for a while now, for better part of a year.
Yeah,
and there's so much content. And it's like this is really good. And I what do I want to learn about next? Where do I need to go next? And I tried to put together, and there were some course lists and things like that. And I thought, well, I'll just do this and I'll kind of work my way this way. But this is so much. I don't know, just so much better to have it kind of curated like that. And then I found myself, using the videos and kind of like Matt said, one screen here and watching the video, and I'd have the REPL open over here and I'd be kind of like working along, and then, kind of save out whatever I've got questions, and that's going to be Q&A. So it was really,
good.
It was really nice to, since I work in an industry where we support education a lot, what this is called in like public education is called flipped classroom. You have the students kind of go over the content first and then come back and you can dive into the content instead of having a teacher just lecture to them,
Yeah. Did you call it flip, or what was the word?
Flipped classroom. Okay. So they receive the content on their own, and then they come back and dissect the content and kind of get into it in the classroom to kind of get that higher level understanding.
I feel like that is something that definitely has been explored since COVID.
Oh, yeah.
More and more. Yeah. This idea that classrooms could potentially expand beyond it. So,
yep.
Akhil or Rich, what did you think about the materials and working through them?
So actually, having both video as well as read through documents, it's really good because some people are like visual learners, some people are, whereas they want to read through things. As a visual learner, I really like the video content, but whenever I want to skim through something and I want to refer back to something, right, video course doesn't help.
The command or control F of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
this becomes much faster to look through whatever we are looking for. Or whatever we are searching for, right? So that way, I think having both is like really good. Yeah, that's a.
Yeah. What about you, Rich?
Yeah, I agree. Having both is perfect. And I like where they match up. Sometimes you go, like, if you go search for something, like, for example, on YouTube or something, as you're trying to figure something out, you find somebody that's, you think they're demonstrating what you want to see, but if you can't actually see the code too, it's hard to follow it. Like sometimes you'll see they'll have a little GitHub link or something, and you can go actually pull up their code while they're talking about it, and then it just makes it easier to follow it.
Yeah. This week, I want to shine a spotlight on another RealPython video course. Iterators and iterables are fundamental components of Python programming, and you'll have to deal with them in almost all your programs. This course is titled Efficient Iterations with Python Iterators and Iterables. It's based on a RealPython tutorial by Leodanis Pozo Ramos. And in the video course, video instructor and my frequent co-host, Christopher Trudeau, teaches you how to create iterators using the iterator protocol in Python, how to understand the differences between iterators and iterables, working with iterators and iterables in your Python code, using generator functions and the yield statement to create generator iterators, and build your own iterables using different techniques such as the iterable protocol. Python iterators and iterables are two different but related tools that come in handy when you need to iterate over a data stream or container. And like most of the video courses on RealPython, this course is broken into easily consumable sections, and where needed, includes code examples for the techniques shown. All RealPython courses have a transcript, including closed captions. check out the video course. You can find a link in the show notes, or you can find it using the search tool on realpython.com. One of the things I was wanting to ask, and I know we kind of touched on it a little bit with each of you, but what was something that you were like very surprised or were unexpected to learn, sort of like aha moments that happened? Anybody have any of those kind of moments where you're like, wow, I did not know about that? I know we mentioned iter tools and we mentioned decorators and a little bit about objects and stuff like that. But were there other things that kind of popped out to you or like, oh, I didn't know that's how that worked in Python?
The func tools were cool.
Okay.
I enjoyed seeing that, the partials.
Okay. So using that, anyone else?
The generators.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I found that because I work a lot with databases and just kind of working with high level modules, you don't really get to really understand how generators or the importance of generators
Yeah.
in working with databases. So it's good to just get an understanding of how those work.
Yeah, not eating everything all at once. Potentially. Yeah, the memory issues. That was something I went through at the data science kind of job I had, but we weren't practicing sort of good practices. So there was a lot of this like, we'll load everything into RAM or, do things like that. And it's like, maybe this is not the efficient way to do things. So anybody else have another one?
This is a very primitive one. I wasn't aware of, if you look at the integers, right, the numbers are like cached.
Yeah.
That I wasn't aware. When I read through it, I was like, it was really a wow moment.
Yeah. Part of the class is to build a project. I was unsure as to like, were you able to sort of select your own sort of topic on that, or was it something where you guys were building something together that was sort of preset?
We all did one joint project.
Is a joint? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So what is it that you build?
Is it a recipe manager application?
Okay. Do you feel like it used a lot of the skills that you had learned through the course?
Definitely. It was totally object-oriented, native Python application. We could have used libraries and outside things, but Steven set the rules. We're all going to stick with native Python.
Okay.
Just do it that way. So, yeah.
Nice. Did you guys all build the same sort of project? Because I know I have people from separate classes here. Yeah. Okay. So the recipe manager. Okay, cool.
Yes.
Yeah.
One of the ones I was wondering about was, how do you see yourself like maybe using the skills that you've learned in your work now?
Ever since taking the course, I've really changed a lot of the way that I'm programming.
Okay.
Because I found that there were a lot of going through just the first part of the object-oriented programming. Like I said, I've seen it before. I never really understood like what cases I would use it. But here I had more of a tangible understanding of it. And so going through the code that I do for work, started to see, I could replace this with classes and it would be a lot more readable, a lot more efficient.
Yeah, cool. So this is, again, doing a lot of database sort of stuff?
Yeah, I'm a data engineer, so a lot of ETL processes.
Okay, yeah, nice. One of the things I think about that happens with a lot of books and a lot of courses is that you're presented with a toy example. And I find it to be one of the most frustrating things because if this person didn't care enough to make this an example that they would reuse or do something else with, like, why should I learn this example? I don't know if you guys had a similar experience. You want to build things and create things that you can maybe even show other people and go, hey, this is really cool. It's the same way I am with music. Like, I feel like they always have you learn all these kind of really goofy songs. And I'm like, I'm never going to play that song for somebody.
No,
I understand that it's public domain, but like, could we learn like a popular song? So
I've had that experience. Well, not with music, but I've had that experience where, especially dealing with network administration, network integration, things like that.
Okay.
There's lots of tools out there, and it's like, oh, we've written a Python module that does this, or you can use, there's this API, and you can just write something. It's like I think, I know a little bit of Python. I could do this. I take a look at something. It's like, and I realized that, well, how I know how this works is based off of this little, and it's a toy example. And so when I try to like leverage that information, it kind of doesn't translate all that well.
Yeah.
But now looking at, things at work, I think I can leverage this into really taking advantage of some of the, integrations that might be able to be done and kind of like streamline some of the things we do.
Are you comfortable with like saying something specific?
Well, there's like lots of tools. One of the things that comes to mind, because we were just dealing with this last week with an Ethernet situation, using like Scapy, generating Ethernet frames, because we had some switches that were misbehaving, and it turned out it was because of flow control. There's an Ethernet pause frame, and the switch wasn't handling it properly, but it was really kind of hard to track down because you had to catch it in the act. So you want to recreate the situation. Well, how do we recreate a situation? Well,
Yeah.
and so now I feel like instead of, let's try to do something complicated where we have to like get the condition set right, I could have just, let me just write this program. I can approach this and not spend a ridiculous amount of time trying to get it to work.
Yeah.
I can just sit down and apply the skills because I'll recognize what this is supposed to work like. So is that specific?
Applying for testing stuff. Yeah, that's great. That's fantastic.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So Chris, how do you see yourself using some of these things?
Better support for, I do a lot of manual QA testing.
Okay.
Where I work. And that's another field I want to get into is the PyTest stuff and building more like automation testing when something gets pushed, and have it go through and test all of our internal apps. And this definitely will help me write some better code.
Yeah.
When something goes wrong,
yeah,
with one of our internal applications, I can now go into the code and see a little better why something's going wrong, and so helping support our end users. This is going to help a lot.
Yeah, it's funny that once you kind of develop these skills, how you start to see things differently. You start to like, okay, I now know the puzzle pieces that I can maybe use to assemble here. Again, like kind of like the woodworking example, like, I know which tools and which order to put them in and so forth. So, Rich, do you have any examples of ways you see yourself using this at work?
Yeah, so I've been writing a lot of scripts mostly for myself, and now I'm starting to write scripts for other people.
Okay.
So, and then eventually deliver it to the other person where it's not a script writer that's going to actually take it over and use it. So I need to, it's got to be robust, it's got to work, but I've got to put in all the sort of friendly things, that help someone out. Like, you forgot to put the input file name in, or you forgot to put the output file name in, or there was, put the checks in to make sure if something went wrong, it generates some sort of, message that tells the user what happened.
Yeah. I feel that, I don't know how many of you do work with a team. Do you see yourself like sharing, like you're saying in your case, Rich, that you would be sharing some of these skills with somebody else and sort of teaching some of the stuff that you learned?
Yeah, I don't know if they're interested yet in learning it. I know but one of my colleagues is interested in learning, but this particular person, she just wants to be able to run the script herself, versus me running it for her.
Okay.
So I'm like, okay, that's fine. So I'm just trying to get it all in order where I can hand it off to her and she can run it and understand how it works.
Yeah, definitely.
Get it all set up with the right library dependencies and everything installed. So
cool. Akhil, do you see yourself using some of these skills you've learned at your job, or how you might implement them?
Yeah, actually, I've already created some projects. I have some backlogs, which are not, when I look at it, I'm not really proud of it right now. I've already started, going back to those projects and redesigning or, fixing few things.
Nice. Refactoring.
Refactoring. Yeah. And also, one more thing is, before this, right? I ordered Python tricks book. And since Rich mentioned, though he said he's not interested in showing it to others, but there were some tricks actually. I showcased it to some people and they were like, even though they're like, they're not great Python developers, some of the things were like, even they were like surprised to discover it.
Yeah.
So
I had that experience at work when I again, I was working the data science job. I was in a bit of a marketing department, and F strings were brand new. And I was like, this is awesome. And everybody's like looking at me like, what? Like, who cares, you know? But we worked with so much text that came out of databases. And I'm like, this is going to change how I do all this stuff. And it's going to make it much easier. So I definitely had one of those things where like, okay, we're going to have like a little lunch and learn or whatever kind of event. And so it was fun to kind of teach some of those skills to other team members. Were there other things that you already knew that you wanted to sort of skill up on, that you were like, okay, I kind of know this, but like, I'm still a little confused about it? Were there any of those kinds of examples that you can think of? I know you kind of touched a little bit on some of these things, but
Yeah, I think everything.
Everything. Okay.
Again, just all of it.
Yeah.
The self-learning.
One of the things for me, and it wasn't necessarily a specific topic, but basically just data structures. Learning about data classes was a really good thing for me, and trying to make a decision about, well, what data structure do I need to use for this application? Because I mean, so many times I'd like look at something, I just kind of like, oh, I'll just make a list, or I'll just, and it's like, well, what's really the best way to approach this? And now to be able to kind of think about, all the different characteristics of data structures, mutable, immutable, is this ordered, is this, it really gives me a bit of an ability to kind of more critically think before I start writing something, to know that, okay, this is really the direction I want to go.
Yeah, that's cool. Like, that's one of the things that I felt, again, going back to sort of the basics of what you learn in Python. You learn, okay, a list and a tuple, and you learn dictionaries and so forth. But you kind of find that there are these better things, sort of, if you want, hiding underneath the surface, that will work so much better for you in these purposes. So having somebody to kind of guide your hand, it's a really useful step there. What I was wondering about with that is, do you feel more comfortable now to continue your learning on your own? Do you feel like this in some ways gives you enough of the language that you could say, okay, I'm going to go look and do some more research on my own? How do you feel about that?
Yeah, so it's definitely given me more confidence to go into deep dive things that I just kind of, all the things that I just took for granted all the time. Like, I was just reading a real Python article yesterday on the GIL, and 3 months ago I would have never touched anything in terms of memory management. Like, it was just abstracted. I didn't need to worry about it. I could just go do a module and get what I needed. But after this course, I feel much stronger in being able to understand the fundamentals of why things work in Python, that it's given me more confidence to go deeper.
Cool. Chris?
Yeah, I agree. The next Udemy class I take, I'll no, a lot more.
Yeah. So, Jerry, you were saying, we were talking a little bit about being more comfortable with continuing to learn more about Python on your own, and like maybe explore things inside the libraries and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Just I'm kind of more to a level when I can look at modules, I can look at other people's code, and I can kind of understand, why they're doing what they're doing. And it's not just kind of taking things for granted anymore. So it allows me to kind of get more into the design of code, and not just the basic understanding of, oh, they must be doing looping here, or they must be doing something, not basic, but very kind of surface level, obvious. So it's helped with that, so I can kind of go on and start exploring more complex things without just immediately getting lost.
Yeah. That's definitely the thing. That's one of the things. Like, I know you guys talk a lot about classes and Dunder methods, and it's funny because there's like, I feel like there's 5 different names for that idea. And the idea that, oh, it's magic, I always thought was funny. People calling them magical methods. And it's like, no, this is literally how the language is structured.
Just how they built it.
Yeah, it's not really any kind of magic happening. But, to somebody who's going from basic writing scripts to doing something more advanced, it may seem that way, because they look really funky, definitely. Yeah. So I guess maybe I can kind of wrap up on, Are there other parts of your life where you use programming and you might see yourself using some of these skills? We talked a lot about work here, but do you see yourself using, Python for other things? Like I like to do music and other kinds of fun projects. I dabble in electronics. So are there other areas that you guys are interested in exploring and using Python yourselves? So I'll do the around the horn again here. Maybe I'll start with Chris this time.
Yeah, I like to find like a personal project and expand on it. So I have a group of friends that we go see movies every month. And so I built a website
Oh, cool.
for, we put our review in, we keep track of the movies we've seen. So it'll be great to go back and kind of add some more of this stuff that I learned to it. But also I'd like to hire Steven to curate some more real Python stuff, maybe like a DevOps section or a web development section. See if he's available to do that.
We'll forward that to him. The request.
That's a great idea.
Jerry.
Yeah, I've put a lot towards work, but there's some things I kind of like to do. I like to dabble with electronics as well. With working with schools, there's a lot of IoT stuff that's come out and been present. In fact, one of the ways we've used Python, I didn't actually do it. A coworker did. And we actually kind of worked on it a little bit together because he used pre-existing code, but used a Raspberry Pi with a whole bunch of environmental monitors. We have a server room, and we needed to, for cybersecurity reasons, be able to make sure we kept track of moisture and temperature and, just regular stability reasons as well.
Yeah.
And so just the idea of using Raspberry Pis to do different things and just kind of tinker around with little projects and fun things like that,
Yeah. I bought some little standalone module that was like a temperature and humidity. And I bought the Raspberry Pi that's kind of like an old computer, like being like from the 80s, where it's like all built in the Raspberry Pi and the keyboard is all one. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. I've seen that.
Yeah. And then so I bought the little breakout little unit for that with the pins and everything to go to a breadboard. So very fun.
Yep.
Yeah, cool. Akhil, are there things that you're using Python in other parts of your life?
Yeah, of course. I built like two projects. One was actually looking at it was something called Asteroid Game.
Okay.
That was part of the course. But actually what happened was, I was building it and I had completed it. And my son is like 2 years.
Okay.
And somehow he came to my room when I was doing it. And he
took over.
He started playing it. And then I had to improvise it and, make it better.
Yeah.
So,
you get a user already wanting changes and updates. That's fun.
Yeah. And also, I wasn't showing him the screens for like mobile screens or anything like that so far.
Oh.
So when he looked at this one, it became like very interesting thing for him. Yeah.
Got excited.
Yeah. But actually, it gave me some satisfaction.
Yeah.
So I also started looking at like some other Pi games. Yeah.
Yeah. You got a client you got to build stuff for now.
Right.
So Rich, how are you using Python? Are you using it in other parts of your life?
So mostly at work, but I've been looking for a while for more projects, and fortunately, they're starting to come through my regular work life. But I've offered. Actually, I did this. I offered for my wife her work. I said, "Well, I could help you with that." She was doing these very complicated pivot tables, and I said, "Well, I could do that in Pandas much easier." And then I offered for. Actually, I have a part-time role too. I offered for them. They kind of were a little bit interested, but didn't bite on it. But mostly at work, my role has recently changed, and I think there'll be more opportunity for more work coming out in the future. So I'm interested in that.
Yeah, it's so funny at work that how you can be kind of like a magician suddenly because you can do programming things.
Yep.
Yeah, cool. Matt, are you using Python in other parts of your life or plan to?
Yeah, pretty much most aspects of my life. So I coach soccer.
Oh, cool.
I coach for a pretty large club. We have about 1,300 kids.
Wow.
And so we really haven't had much of an infrastructure in kind of developing coaches. So I'm currently working on building a CRM style application to like put training resources, practice ideas, because most of the coaches we have are just volunteers who've never coached before.
Yeah.
I don't really know where to go get material. So
are you looking at a particular platform there?
Building it in Django.
Yeah. Okay. I was going to steer you there. Yeah, cool. Chris, were you going to comment on that?
Just Django. Yeah, I use it in like most of all my personal projects.
Is that the movie one was kind of?
The movie one. I've done multiple other projects for people, and just starting it up and not having to worry about authentication as much.
Yeah.
Just for some of these projects, it's great.
Yeah, you kind of get more straight to building, which is kind of nice. Yeah, not having that stuff is. There are things where you like, I don't want to be an expert in everything.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes I felt like I went through this mega Flask tutorial by Miguel Gernberg, which is very good, but oh my word, it's like, okay, all right, now we're going to roll our own version of this and we're going to roll,
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank everybody for joining this week. It's been fantastic to talk to all of you, and thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Absolutely.
Of course. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. And don't forget, Real Python's launching another intermediate deep dive, cohort-based course coming up at the end of April. You can learn more at realpython.com/workshops. I want to throw out a big thank you to all my guests this week: Matt, Chris, Jerry, Akhil, and Rich. Thanks again for coming on the show. And I want to thank you for listening to the Real Python podcast. Make sure that you click that follow button in your podcast player. And if you see a subscribe button somewhere, remember that the Real Python podcast is free. If you like the show, please leave us a review. You can find show notes with links to all the topics we spoke about inside your podcast player or at realpython.com/podcast. And while you're there, you can leave us a question or a topic idea. I've been your host, Christopher Bailey, and look forward to talking to you soon.